Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming out. It's exciting to see so many people here. Thank you all so much for coming and joining us for tonight's Behind the Glass panel discussion. My name is Meek. I'm the Senior Manager of Hot Glass Programs here at the museum and a practicing artist for about 25 years myself. So I'm really excited to be leading the discussion here tonight with these great artists. Joining me this evening are Ayers, Janet Dalecki, Milon Townsend, Margaret Neher, and from Hudson Beach Glass, we have John Gilvey and Michael Benzer. Before you all introduce yourselves, I want to say a few things about why we're here in Local Artists Week. This is a very exciting project for us. Tonight's discussion is the highlight event for a first-time week-long celebration of local and regional artists. As you know, these glassmakers have been working right here in the amphitheater hot shop this week. Really excited to have this lecture tonight in the hot shop. It's the first time we've done this as well. And they're returning on Saturday to represent their own work at the Makers Market in the shops from 10 to 4. So be sure to come back to visit with the artists and take a look at what they create and maybe even go home with a new piece of art. The talented artists in this area are key to the vitality of the museum, a staple in our community, and an important link to the glassmaking history of our region. Glassmaking came to Corning nearly 150 years ago, and so it would be easy to think of it as part of our past. Here in our community and at the museum, we see that's far from the truth. We feel that glassmakers calling this area home are the torchbearers of the tradition, and they can stand proud in a long history of excellent craftsmanship. The thriving community of glass artists easily exceeds 50 people here locally and hundreds regionally. It's a very special place, and I think we have really just an amazing confluence of talent right here in our area. Opportunities for glassmakers at any point in their career are numerous in the region today. There are places to learn from our own studio, where hundreds have honed their techniques and taught classes. The studio which drew me to Corning nearly 20 years ago from Ohio. Two of the best university glass programs in the country are right in our backyard at Alfred and RIT. There are places which create from our local studios like Vitrix, Hands on Glass, and Hawk and Axel. There are glass tool makers right here in our region, like Griffin Glass Tools and Art Reed Wooden Blocks. And there are places to sell our work, from our own museum gift store to the Market Street Gallery's Glass Menagerie, West End Gallery Exhibit A, the Arts Council of the Southern Finger Lakes. In our own museum shops, locally made glass has accounted for $3.2 million in sales over the last 10 years. And Megan has actually counted up, that's over 64,000 objects. So it really is a vital part of creating opportunities for local artists. Corning certainly has a lot to offer glass artists, and these glass artists certainly add the sparkle to our Crystal City. I got away with it. In addition to learning the craft and selling work, many glassmakers supplement their personal endeavors by working for the museum and other local studios. Without the deep and diversely skilled pool of glassmakers calling this area home, the museum could never offer the many great programs that our guests love. Our hot glass demonstrations, the Make Your Own Glass workshop, studio classes, blow glass at sea with celebrity cruises, outreach such as our mobile hot shop and the upcoming glass barge project are a few of the many programs that rely on a strong workforce of part-time glassmakers. These opportunities, along with the world-class museum shops, help local artists hone their glassmaking and marketing skills and help them realize their dream of living and working as a full-time artist. Tonight we're happy to be speaking with some of these very talented artists from the region, and let me introduce them now. And if you could, please just say a little bit about where you live and how long you've worked with glass, what brought you to the glass. So Catherine, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Ayers. I grew up just down the road in Pine City, New York. I went to art school up at RIT. Took my first glassblowing class over at the studio. That's where I fell in love with the material. Went to the Rochester Institute of Technology, and then after that I moved to Philadelphia. I've lived in Cape Cod for a little while, and then moved back home, and now I live here in Corning.
I'm not supposed to ask questions yet, but so you said you took a class at the studio and then you decided to go to school at RIT.
Mm-hmm. I was planning on going to RIT anyway, but for something completely different. Still in the arts, but fell in love with glass and decided to go into the glass program up there.
Do you remember who taught your class?
George Kennard and Harry Seaman. I took both of those 2 beginning glassmaking classes.
And you still decided to
and
pursue?
I still decided to go into it, yeah.
Oh, great. Janet?
Hi, I'm Janet Dalecki. I am from Long Island originally, but I went to Alfred University in 1998, and I've been living in the region ever since. I currently live in central New York, but I lived here in Corning for over 10 years. I've worked for the museum, as well as a couple of local hot glass shops here. I work in blown glass, but I also like to do fusing and mosaics.
Thanks, Janet. And Milon Townsend?
I've been making glass since 1974. You can figure out how many years that is. I knew Bill Goodnerath from my years in New York City, from the New York Experimental Glass Workshop. And Bill and Amy contacted me when they started the studio over here and asked me if I wanted to come do some classes there. So I taught over the studio for 17 years. And I've been very grateful to have been involved with the Corning Museum of Glass. It's had a lot of very important influences on me and helped me shape my career as I went along. I used to sell primarily retail, then I sold primarily wholesale, and we're changing that as we go along. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later this evening, which is as the marketplace changes, as we change, as our needs in our life change, we do things differently. And one thing I learned is that it's a very special thing to love what you do. The people who say love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, that's bogus. You'll work every day of your life, but you'll like what you're doing. It's definitely work, but I really do enjoy it. So my financial advisor said, as long as I can work till I'm 80, I'm golden. So.
Okay, we're already getting to the truth of living as an artist. And I think that's a great point, though, too, about teaching. You know, teaching is not just about giving. You get just as much when you're teaching. It's really
I learned a great deal.
Yeah. And Margaret?
I'm originally from Long Island. I graduated from Ithaca College in 1977 in music. I started doing stained glass in 1984 and flame working 1994, I'm not sure. I took that class from you.
Then it would have been the late 80s. I left New York in 92, and it
Really?
was before that. So 89, 90, 91.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Anyway,
We go back a ways.
we do.
So Milon was your first flameworking teacher?
Yes.
Wow. We're learning a lot tonight.
Yeah.
That's great.
The first class I took was from Milon, and after that he moved up to where he is now, which is only a couple hours from me, and I came up every so often, and he'd show me something new, which was really helpful early on. I've lost my train of thought. So I've been doing flame working exclusively since close to that time, and I've also done quite a bit of teaching, both here at the studio and in various other glass venues around the country.
And you live in Ithaca now?
And I live in Ithaca, New York.
Great. And the Hudson Beach Boys, how about you guys?
Michael Benzer, grew up in southern New York. Was fortunate enough to be included as a first group of teenagers at a summer program in Connecticut in 1975, blowing glass, taught by an Alfred graduate student, and I've forgotten his name. Nope, it's gone. Came home that summer and found an apprenticeship just 10 miles down the road from another RIT student. She didn't finish the program. She's no longer with us, but it enabled me to blow glass through high school and returned to the summer program. Was a teaching assistant and then a teacher before I started school at RIT. And that was 1978.
So was Michael Taylor at RIT at the time?
No. We're still.
Before that even?
There was my freshman year was John Meyer, who was a Steuben employee.
Wow.
So we blew lead crystal our first year, 1978 and 9. Then Andy Magdance took over the program. I worked with Andy for 2 years, and then Michael Taylor my senior year.
Great.
And we'll get to the story how John and I met, but That also goes back to 1975.
Great. And John,
Yeah.
where did you start?
I started, let's see, I was a fine arts major in college at the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, a sculpture major. And after I got out, I was passing myself off as a carpenter to make a living, and I ran into a guy who had a food service degree from Pratt, who was passing himself off as a glass blower in Connecticut. And he had taken a 3-month class in glass out in Sausalito. And I went to work for him, and worked for him for about almost 2 years. And then he went to do some shows down in Florida, and my wife was 3 months pregnant. And so I took the money for the baby and built a glass furnace. And the rest is history. And she's still with me, I have to say. Yeah.
I've got a 10-month-old. They don't need much.
Yeah, no, they really don't. Really don't.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Thank you all for taking the time to be here this week. It's really exciting to have such a great group here. Milon, I think we're going to start the questions with you. So you're a flame worker. Flame worker is very versatile. You can make anything from a neon sign to scientific apparatus with it. I'd like to start things off by asking you how you came to flame working, and if you can say how a market has changed in 45 years. What's changed? What's different from when you started in terms of selling your work?
How I came to it. I was in high school. I was like fire. Let's just be honest here. I'm over that now, mostly. And a friend of mine had taken a piece of tubing in the biology lab in high school and twisted it in a Bernzomatic torch flame, and it just had this very graceful curve to it. So somehow that night, one of those torches and some of that glass ended up in my house. I don't know how that happened. And the amazing thing is, my parents let me do this unsupervised in my bedroom at the age of 16. Seriously. No fireproof work surface, no fire extinguisher, no ventilation, no supervision. 10 years ago, I said, Dad, what were you thinking? But they just let me do that. And I was interested in it. I made things. I discovered that I could sell them. I had worked at kind of a home appliance store making, back then, big money, $85 a week. And I made $966 at a weekend show then. I said, there's something to this. So, quite frankly, I found myself able to support myself making things that I enjoyed making. And in my mind, the ideal work is work that I like to make that people like to buy. I love it when those two things coincide. I started out doing flea markets. I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning, get that McDonald's coffee that used to taste like pencil shavings. It was so consistent. And we do flea markets. I had stores in Rochester. I had stores in Manhattan. I started doing wholesale. I did retail shows. Then I did only wholesale. And now I do about half wholesale and about half retail. I do 3 Renaissance festivals, one in Texas, which is I'm doing right now. I came up for this. Corning graciously brought me up here. One in Texas, one in Maryland, and one in New York. And the important thing about doing festivals is I still look good in tights. That's very important. So the market has changed, and it doesn't really matter how it's changed because my little piece of it never changed the same as everybody else's piece of it. My thing might be going up and somebody else's might be going down, but we have to be able to evaluate what we're doing, how it's working, and modify what we're doing so that it works better for us.
And you think interacting directly with your customers helped to be adaptable?
Actually, interacting directly with my wife was more formative in that regard. So
Great.
that was very important because she keeps a good eye on how things are working, and she'll let me know if it's not, because I don't always see that right away. I just like to make what I like to make. She gives me a list, and then sometimes I stay with the list, sometimes I go off the list. And sometimes when I go off the list, it's good work. Sometimes it's not such good work, and I have to remind her that that's where the good work comes from. It isn't always good when you start, but sometimes you can make it that way over time. And I've always enjoyed working directly with people, retail, at these Renaissance festivals, because it's like a compression chamber. It's like a petri dish. It's a very fast feedback of how people like what you're doing. It's very fast. If somebody, and people ask me to make things all day long. I love that. It challenges me. I do have my animal encyclopedia handy all the time, but I'm always challenged to make a new thing I've never made before in front of 30 people and have it come out well and have the person who asked for it like it and pay me for it. And if I can get all that done and the person standing next to them says, I want one too, and then that happens 5 times that day, I may have developed a good thing.
You're starting a trend.
So I learned very quickly that way. So.
I think the nice thing about flame working is that you can react that quickly. You can go to your market, you can make your work there, you can make things right in front of people. Janet, tell us about your work and where you make it. Now, you're a furnace worker, so it's a little bit of a different story. So where do you make your work? Do you have your own shop? Tell us about it.
I blow glass right across the parking lot here at the studio, and it's a wonderful place to work. They really keep everything so clean, and they have every tool you could possibly imagine. And it's great to work within the community. There's so many glass blowers that you're working amongst a whole bunch of people that are all energized, all making different things, all having different ideas. So, it's really nice working there. I don't have my own studio, but I'm in the early process of buying a house, and studio is number 1 on the list.
Is it?
And I mean a space dedicated to glass. I don't know that I would want to build a hot shop. Part of what I pay for over at the studio is the ability to just walk out the door and say, doesn't matter if I left the gas on or not, because it's just not my responsibility. My parents lost their home to a fire 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
No fault of their own. But, seeing that devastation is just something that I don't know I would really want to have in my home. But I will say, on the flip side, there are a lot of options out there. I go to trade shows or conferences, and I see a lot of little crucibles, little setups, and I think that there are options. I wouldn't totally rule out having a glass studio at my house, because I think they can make, there are options out there to make small, manageable glass blowing, little furnaces. But I think definitely we'll start with a dedicated space for maybe some kilns and just some tables and good lighting.
So the benefit of working at a rental shop like the studio is that when you're done, right? You can.
Yep. Everything I need is there. I can blow glass there. I can finish it there, and then I can just bring it home and and be among other artists, which I really think is important.
Are there any drawbacks to working at a
For
public
sure.
studio?
I think when you're with a bunch of artists and you're all trying to do a similar thing, sometimes there can be big personalities and big egos at times. But I would say on the flip side, I think you'd get more from it than there are drawbacks, because you might stumble into a conversation and that you wouldn't have had by yourself in your own studio. You have candid conversations. You're exposed to other people's work. You're exposed to ideas. So even though there are drawbacks, I mean, it would be great to just leave the tools and be able to play my music at any time of the day and whatever. But certainly, I think the benefits outweigh the drawbacks.
Having the studio here is a tremendous resource, I think,
Absolutely.
for the community. I mean, like I said in the beginning, we have a local community of over 50 glass artists, and I think nearly all of us use the studio as our home shop, and it's really a great asset to have in the area. Margaret, you, I'm sure, have your own studio. You're a flame worker, so it's a little easier to have something like this in your home. Can you tell us about your setup, about your own shop?
Yeah, when I was doing stained glass, I rented a studio. I think I did eventually move that into my basement, so I was sort of set there by the time I started doing flame work. So I'm working in my basement. It's cramped, it's chaotic. I'm always hoping to make it otherwise, and it's a work in progress, but it works for me. I think one of the things that's been difficult about it was for a very long time I didn't have proper ventilation, but I was unaware of that. I had a good ventilation system, but insufficient intake air. So I actually suffered from low-level chronic carbon monoxide poisoning for something like 20 years. Yeah, I'm the expert on the subject, really. And actually, at the time that I found out about this, sort of the general convention was that it didn't exist. People knew a lot about acute poisoning, but nothing about low-level poisoning. And thank goodness there's a lot more known about it now. So I really had trouble getting any help with it.
I think that's kind of an important thing with the panel here to, when you're a young glass artist, you just want to get in there, you want to make your work, you don't really think about the health effects, long-term health effects. So
it's not that I didn't think about them, and my plumber put in intake air, but it just wasn't enough, and I wasn't measuring it properly, I guess. Didn't have a carbon monoxide detector. In any case, I got sicker and sicker and sicker until I happened to have an energy audit, and the guy came in and he took a bunch of readings and looked at me and said, "You've been suffering from low-level carbon monoxide poisoning for a very, very long time." And I said, "Me? Nah, I'm fine," although I'm actually really kind of very sick all the time. So since then, I have a brand spanking new ventilation system, which is very, very high tech. Big hood. The air comes up in front of the torch and carries everything right out. That was something interesting I noticed today. I wasn't aware how much of the heat it also carries out. Working in this space, all of the heat from the glass just splashed back on me and was really hot.
I will say, just for everyone here, aside from picking the color paint in this room, the most time was spent on designing the ventilation system. So we're good. Okay, we have great ventilation in the shop here.
Yes, you do. I can vouch for that because I carry an industrial carbon monoxide detector with me everywhere I go now, and I had it there on the bench and zero reading. So, kudos.
John, I've been intrigued with your product line for a long time. I've seen the work that you guys have done, and I think it occupies a very interesting niche in the market. These colorful pressed glass objects. It's something that other people just don't do. Can you tell us how you got to that? Like how did you get to pressing glass?
It had mostly to do with Michael. So I'm a glass blower. I mean, I started out as a blowing glass. I started in. By 1980, we were selling to almost every major department store in the United States, blown glass and iridized, kind of Tiffany-style glass. I was doing reproductions, stuff like that. Michael was going to RIT, and he moved down to the Hudson Valley after he graduated, and we actually ran into each other by accident in a shower room. At a local health club where we were both naked, and we hadn't seen each other in a while, and then we saw all of each other. So
it's a great way to start out. Just put it all out there.
Yeah, pretty much everything was there. So we started. He had moved down to the Hudson Valley, and him and his family had bought an industrial building in Beacon, New York, and he was starting a architectural tile business. Casting architectural tiles
in glass.
In glass, yeah.
Yeah. And I had never seen that process before. I mean, I knew about it, but I'd never seen it before. He had found up in Rochester in a scrapyard, a lens grinding mold, and he had pressed a little 5-inch bowl that was round on the bottom, so that when you set it on a table, it rocked. So it wasn't really a very functional object, but for some reason we thought we might be able to sell it to somebody. And I was doing a lot of trade shows, and I had the kind of marketing thing going on, and so we took it to market. And a guy who was a glass blower up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, his wife said, if you could just put the bowl on the tile, maybe I could sell it. So he put a little divot in the tile and stuck the bowl on it that kept it from rocking, because neither of us wanted to do any cold work. So, and all of a sudden...
The other good part, twice as much money for the tile.
Yeah, twice as much money for the tile. Right, yeah. So all of a sudden we started selling these things, and they were selling, and it almost seemed like we couldn't do anything wrong. We stopped pouring like square tiles and just poured a puddle of glass, put a divot in it, stuck a bowl on it, and people bought it. It was amazing. And the business just started growing, and then we started getting more complex. So we would like stack up some blocks of steel on the marver, pour glass over it, put a divot on it, stick a bowl on it, and they bought that.
So the color also.
Yeah.
So I was melting 12 colors at
12
that
colors.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it enabled you to do a color contrast. So
So you could put two different colors
different
together.
colors
And
together.
you've always been using those nice light tints in the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's work, coincidentally, there's work out in the courtyard lobby there. You have to check it out if you're not familiar with their stuff. And I think it's interesting to talk, to hear about the lens mold from up in Rochester. I mean, this is part of the optics industry, which was a big deal around here.
Yeah,
for a
well,
very
it was
long time.
halfway to a real glass mold, which we, again, I went to RIT and I was blowing glass and also melting colors. And at some point in my very early 20s, I thought I could sell colored glass like the German glass that glass blowers buy. Realized pretty early on I didn't have the technical skills to make glass compatible, which is really a complicated thing. But the colors are beautiful. So making one color, not laminating it with any other, worked fine for making glass tiles.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Catherine, let's when you introduced yourself, you said you've lived in a few other places. What's unique about being an artist here in Corning?
So I always moved to places where there was a big glass community, so I could always find some place to work out of and some place to work. So they were all really great communities with a few glass blowers, but here there's just so many glass blowers. And on any given day, there's glass blowers from the Czech Republic or Murano here working. So you could be working over at the studio, and right next to you there's a Italian master or one of your friends, and it's a great community. And I've also rented in other facilities, which are not as helpful. Over at the studio, you come in, everything's hot, everything's ready, all the tools are there, all the pipes are there, and the wonderful studio techs come over and ask you, what do you need? And you tell them what you need, and they bring it to you, and they have everything. They have everything you ever could need. So I have my own tools, but there's just some tools I don't have, and they bring them right to me, and they are really helpful. They're on call, so I can call them if I need something during that time or something's going wrong, whereas at the other studios I've worked at, if you needed another tool, they'd put that on your bill. If you needed pipes, you had to pay the extra charge for that, and so it was already more expensive to start off, and then you had to add everything else to it.
All these things really go into how you can wholesale your stuff, how much money you're making, how much your products are going for. It all has an effect.
Yep.
Margaret, we had a dry run here, a little dress rehearsal, and Margaret and I were talking a little bit about selling your work, and I'd asked Margaret about a pivotal moment in her glass career, and she gave me a surprising answer. So can you tell us a little bit about how you sell your work and how maybe that's changed, or what's changed about it?
In the very beginning, I did craft shows. Within a very few years, probably 2 or 3 years, I also started doing wholesale shows, and I did both for quite some time. But eventually, I really found that craft shows, for me, were a loss. I never really started making money until I just stopped doing craft shows. I think it's partly because I'm not the best person to sell my work. Galleries do it better. But also, I find that to be a really inefficient way to sell. It takes a tremendous amount of time out of the studio, plus all the time it takes to get ready for the show, the expenses while you're away, and then recovering when you get back. And now I just get orders, make all the stuff, and ship it out. And that makes me really, really happy. I like being at home alone by myself. I'm an introvert. Milon's obviously not. He's good at selling his stuff, and I'm good at selling it to galleries, but not to you guys. I don't know why.
Catherine, I know you sell a lot of your work at craft fairs. Can you tell us about what craft fairs you do and what the process is like? Is it something that you think is worthwhile in the long run?
I think the people that come to the shows think it's just like this everything's set up, it's nice, and it's a very simple thing to do, but it's actually really hard. It takes a lot of work. So I've started making the work for the summer already. I'll do one down in Philadelphia, the Manayunk Arts Festival, and then a lot of them happen in the fall. But you start making the work, and then you've got to sign and price the work, pack that all up so you can get it in the car without it breaking. Pack the car like a Tetris game, so this will fit here, what can go in this little spot. And so you've got all the car packed, there's not any more space to put your luggage or anything. Then you get in. The last thing I check to see before we leave for the weekend is, do I have my Square reader? But it's not a problem, because I can go to Home Depot and get I've bought 3 Square readers already, because I leave
Is
them
that the
home.
credit card thing or what?
Yeah, because without that, it's pretty much, you'll lose a lot of sales. But then getting there, you set the tent up, put the weights on the tent, because if it's windy, and put the walls up. And
Have you ever lost any work because of weather, or?
we did a windy show in Rochester where some wind knocked a few small pieces off, and they were perfectly fine. They're very durable. They bounced, and it was fine. But I haven't lost.
So your work is very durable.
Very
your work for
durable.
sale over
Yeah.
there. Yeah, great.
It's not guaranteed.
I think it's interesting to talk to everybody. I think it's common. I mean, you always say an artist wears many hats, and I think Michael and John, can you give us an idea of how you balance? I know you have such an operation. How you balance your time between making and selling and distributing and marketing and being a human resource manager and a gallerist and I can't imagine.
We have wives.
Okay.
They do most of the work.
Yeah.
No, the 4 of us have kind of unique skill sets.
Yeah.
John is a great front end. Jennifer's a great back end.
Yep.
Wendy and I fill in.
And your gallery's in Beacon, New York, correct?
Well, that's 2 very different businesses. We're in
Yep.
the retail business and the wholesale business. We have really good employees. One that's been with us over 30 years.
Wow.
Another one that grew up in the shop, and he's in the back there, Jacob. He was my assistant ladling. He's been in the shop since he was 4 or 5. His father was our electrician, and his
We
uncle.
don't have child labor laws in Beacon.
His uncle did his job before him.
Oh, wow.
And the young glassblower that works for us at the gallery, she's been with us 8 years.
Yeah, from Alfred.
Yeah, from
She
Alfred.
came out of Alfred. Yeah.
And a shop assistant that's been with us, more than 12 years.
Yeah.
So I know I asked you about, if you could give me a percentage of retail sales on site and wholesale and things like that.
I
but-
can. John, I think I got a grip on it. We do
Yeah.
twice as much retail as wholesale.
Wow, okay.
So we are our own best customers, and we are customers of over 30 other studios from all over the country, including jewelers. And that's been the best change in our business.
Yeah, selling other people's work. You don't have to sweat to make it.
Yeah.
You just make money off of it. And we did that for 30 years. We sold our work to galleries, and all of a sudden we were a gallery, and it was like, oh my God, this is what they do. They buy our work and then they make money off of it. It's like an epiphany. It was like, we're kind of slow in that way.
I also thought it was interesting your internet pricing strategy. Can you share that again with the audience?
Yeah. Our internet prices are we keep our internet prices higher than our galleries sell our work at, so that our galleries aren't competing with us on the internet. So if people want to buy from us on the internet, they can buy from us, but it's going to cost them more than if they go to their local gallery who we sell to, than if they buy from us. And that way we protect our our wholesale customers.
Milon, you obviously, you have a lot of things going on. You're all over the country making glass and selling your ware, but you're also an author. And you said you have another book coming out in a couple of weeks. Tell us what role that plays in your career, writing books.
Well, that's pretty funny because I wrote my first book in 2000, and my idea was I can write a book about how to make glass, then I won't have to teach classes anymore. Guess what happened right
Just
after
read
the
the
book
book.
came out? I started teaching a lot of classes.
Everybody was asking you to teach.
Right, it totally didn't work. But it had other benefits. But my mom's a teacher, my dad's a teacher, my aunts and uncles are all teachers. I come from a lineage of teachers. My grandfather published 6 newspapers in central New York State when he was young. And so for me, publishing something and putting it out there is completion. It's part of my genes. So I just need to do that. I like to share information. I get into trouble. My wife is fortunately there to remind me not to share too much information, especially about certain people. So I really do like putting information together in a useful form that's empirical, that's useful, that people can get repeatable and dependable results from. I taught here for 17 years. I loved those years here doing that. I don't make a lot of money from the books, although that is part of our plan for retirement, is residual income from enough books. I've got one coming out in 2 weeks. And then I hope to have one every 18 months or so for the next 10 years or so.
Are they all technique books or?
Mostly, except for there's a couple that aren't. One is about creativity, which is more broadly based, although I use my own work to illustrate the ideas. And one's called Parallels Between Hot Glass and Human Existence. It also includes coal working.
And cold working. That's great. Tell us more about the Renaissance Fair. How did you get into those?
Well, when I was young, I wanted to go to the one in California. I'd heard about that one. So I was getting ready to go, and I got a letter in the mail about the one in Sterling, New York, inviting me to participate in that. So I didn't go to California then for that. I went to the one in Sterling, New York, and I did it for a few years. And I'll tell you that as a 21, 22, 23-year-old male, being at the Renaissance Festival was not an unpleasant experience. It had certain benefits. And now my son is sometimes there, and he's that age, and I don't feel the same way about him doing that as I felt about me doing it when I was his age. But it's a model that works for us. It's retail. It's what I call the Triple Crown. I have one footprint that I pay for. I have to build or buy a building, which is a pretty big investment. But in that space, I can live and work and sell. So I get to do all 3 things in the same location. The one in Texas is 8 weekends long. The one in New York is 7, and the one in Maryland is 9. So I get to live in those 3 places for those time periods. And you might notice, if you thought about it, that the one in Texas, we're down there now, it's during what we call winter here. And that's not coincidental that we planned that way. We're getting to be of an age where we finally realize you can live where you want to live. You don't just have to be where you are. You can make choices. So for us, a Renaissance Fair booth, we live in it, we're working it, we're selling it, and then during the week we're just there working, and when we're done, we close it up. So we don't have to set up and tear down. You know, we used to do street fairs all the time. One year, I think we did 33. It was a ridiculous amount of work.
Yeah.
It's so the Tetris thing, the setting it up, the tearing it down, the being exhausted on Mondays. I got too old for that. So the fair, it's like that, but it's not like that. So you set it up once at the beginning of the season and take it down once at the end of the season. So it works well for us.
I think when you're looking at it at a career as an artist, it's a little intimidating because the markets are going to change. Every year is a new challenge. There's nothing really stable about it. Does anyone have anything to add about flexibility or about how to remain agile and to react to market trends and to what's happening and what's selling?
Stay small. You can react more quickly if you're small. We used to have lots of employees. Now it's just myself and my wife. I will say that what I love about wholesale, and you say yours is about 50-50, something like that? Retail, wholesale?
No, twice as much retail as
Twice
wholesale.
as much retail as wholesale.
We used
at
to
this
be
point.
95% wholesale, 5% retail.
Yeah, us too.
Now we're about 50-50, and we just discontinued half of our wholesale line, and so we're going to be changing it. But what I'll say about wholesale that I loved was I could sit down to work at the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day, I'd know how much money I made that day. If you're going to a show, you're not sure that what you took is what people are going to want to get that weekend, or if it's going to rain or something, right? So the nice thing about the wholesale is it's predictable. You work for a catalog.
And when you're doing retail, you never feel like you've done enough work because you don't know how much you'll need. It's just never enough.
But you sell your work through the Artful Home catalog, right?
I do.
And that's quite dependable, right?
It's very dependable. Yeah, I still do the Ithaca Farmers Market, so that is retail, but most of my energy goes to the wholesale. And the retail, it gives me a way to interact with people and get feedback on new designs and money. You know, it's probably, depends on the year, maybe 20% of my business, I'm not really sure. But doing wholesale, you know what you have to do, and you do it, and you know when you're done. When I worked retail shows, I worked till 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week, until I had an ulcer and some sort of a breakdown. And I said, it's time to do something differently.
And we were talking about internet sales, and Milon actually says he made a point of not having his website on his card.
I didn't actually say that.
Okay.
My website is on the card.
Yeah.
But when you go to the website, you'll discover you can't buy anything. There's nothing for sale on our website. And people come up to me in the show, they say, could I have one of your cards? I'll literally say it just like this. I'll say, what do you want it for? Because we don't sell our work online. We believe, and in this case, we really means I, and my wife sort of goes along with this, that if we have a person in our booth who's thinking about making a purchase, and if we allow them to take a card with the idea that they might later make a purchase on the website, it might very well not happen. Whereas if we tell them, honestly, you can get it now or you can come see us next year, they often get it now. But that's not been your experience, has it? You found that the website works well for you.
Yeah, it works well for us because our store location is in a place where we see a lot of international travelers and people from all around the United States. And they will, they'll come to our store, they'll see our work, they'll purchase something, and then a year later they'll be buying a wedding gift or something like that, and they'll
Online.
They'll buy it online.
Now, Janet, you said you also did some fusing. Has that been a way for you to stay agile, for you to maybe if you don't have the hot shop resources to stay busy?
Yeah, the fusing has just been another way for me to be involved in glass. It's been really wonderful, and there is definitely an interest. So we draw students continuously. So yeah, and there aren't that. I think there are a lot more glassblowers in town than there are fusers. So that's opened some doors for me to continue teaching, being that there's not a lot of competition for me. Yeah.
Margaret, this may seem like an obvious question because you make botanical models and you make fruits and things like that, but what inspires you? What motivates you to work, to do what you do?
The need to eat.
Very honest answer. I like it.
Don't beat around the bush.
Yeah.
It's a big part of it. It is.
Yeah.
I do enjoy what I do, and beyond the need to eat, I think it's the challenge of always pushing my boundaries and doing things that are more complex and more interesting to me.
The need to eat, my path, my personality was either chef or glassmaker. It's the same kind of very, very quick, very important decisions you have to make as in cooking.
Food comes up a lot in our partnership.
Yeah. I know a lot of glassmakers who are very good cooks.
I mean, we always, when we're traveling with Michael, we always know where we're eating next.
Very important skill to have. Catherine, how long have you been making glass now?
About 15 years.
What would you tell a young Catherine Ayers if you could go back 10 years and say, hey, you know what?
Save more money. Save more money. I don't know. I would tell someone else that you should really love to do this because it's going to be a lot of work, and it's you're gonna have to put a lot of work in. You work 8 to 5, and then 7 to 10. You work when you go home. So you have to really love it.
Milon, do you have similar advice for your students? Are they asking for advice, or are they?
I'm sort of out of the advice business.
Yeah.
Unless somebody really asks me, I don't just give advice. It's generally not a good idea because I have a son, you know, I know what that's like. So, but what you said, love what you do, because this really is a lot of work, and it's really not, you can make a lot more money doing something else.
Yeah.
You really could, generally.
So being an artist isn't like just being creative and making cool things and...
I used to do these workshops with Megan about marketing your work, and then I did some other places, and there'd be a group of people, and I'd say, please put your hand up and tell me why you're doing this, and people would raise their hand, and the first 9 people would be, I'm doing this because I want to express myself or be creative, and I'd say, okay, and then finally I'd get somebody who would say, because I need to make a living. I'd say, okay, you can stay. Because if you're doing it to express yourself, it doesn't owe you a living too. Mm-hmm. So I design work. I'm going to make some dragons tomorrow.
Great.
They'll all end up about 5.5 inches long, about 3.5 inches wide, and about 2 inches tall. I can make 4 different poses out of the dragon body blanks that my friend Terry makes for me. This is how I make my living. I know how long it takes me to make each one. I know how many minutes. I know how much the glass, gas, and oxygen costs. These are not the basis on which you set your price, but it's the floor below which, if you set your price incorrectly, you'll lose money. You actually have to make some money doing it, or you can't support yourself. You have to know these things. And thank you for doing this, Corning, because this is something that people, I could name names that you'd all recognize who are represented out there who won't talk about this. And it's not all about the money, but the money plays a role. It's very important. And if you're not willing to admit that and deal with it, it's going to be very difficult to move forward.
I think it's hard getting into the game. You want to price yourself competitively, then you wind up not paying yourself, and that's not a good thing.
I think in order for it to work, you have to be doing something that's really unique and different, and you're who they have to go to get it. At least that's what I've found.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's time to take some questions for the audience. Does anyone out there have questions for us? Please raise your hand. Cara will be around with a microphone, so wait for Cara before you ask your question, please.
This is for Kat or anybody else, but we were here on Tuesday and watched her make 2 beautiful elephant pictures, and it was like she just made them. How long does it take you to develop something like this and to get to a point where you can manufacture it like on an assembly line?
At that rate, 15 years. I wasn't making that work, you know. I haven't noticed, you don't notice the progress because it happens so slow. So you take something you made last year and put it next to something you made this year, and you're like, whoa, you know, things are progressing, things are getting better. But yeah, I wasn't making this stuff 10 years ago, 8 years ago. It's just now.
I will also say that every year, if I go to fill an order for something that I've been making for 15 years, I will always mess up the first one. And it's like, oh my God, I have been making this for so long, but to me, it's the muscle memory that has to kick back in again. And it takes, even though I know it inside and out, I have to feel like the physical, like the steps. And so I always find that even something I think I really know, I have to make a few of them and remember all the very, very subtle nuances of exactly what to do to make it the same every time and to make it just right.
That's really why we wanted to ask these artists to come in and work here this week, because I think it's important to understand that doing production work like this is about repetition, and we wanted to do that in the shop. Typically, we don't really do repetitive things in the shop here, but really to get to a point where you have things in the store where you know what your costs are, where you know how long it takes, how much color it takes, it has to be repetition, and you got to get into that.
I'd like to ask you guys a question. Do you have models that you keep there so that you can remind yourself of the size, the shape, the color, things like that?
I do, yeah.
Do you have models of like an elephant vase and a bamboo shoot and stuff like that?
Somewhat, but my work is never all the same, and I think that's what keeps my interest in it. Is it's always changing, and it doesn't bother me if something's a little taller, or a little shorter, or it's handmade.
I saw another hand over here. Do you have a question? We'll have a microphone come in just a second, please.
Work that is yours that you can sell, that attract other people. How much do the two conflict? Is there sort of is working with other people in some respects a distraction?
No, I think even when I work with someone, I'm watching them and always learning from them. I'm not, you're not learning what they're doing, but learning how they do it. And when you work with a lot of different people, you gain a wide variety of knowledge and skills.
And I think there's an unwritten rule in the glass community is like you respect someone's designs. If someone is making something, that's their work. Even if they're assisting you, that's their work.
I also
Right.
want to just say that being here at Corning, we have lectures, we have classes, we have guest artists. There's so much going on that I think that as an artist, I try to draw my inspiration from a combination of all these different things and not, just because we're surrounded by each other, I'm not just looking at what people are making around me, but I'm trying to draw from so many different things that are offered here in Corning. So I think there's a lot of variety. And I also like to take classes from other artists that are here. And I really focus on just listening to what their inspirations are, their experiences. So I think when you try to take in a lot of different things at once, it helps you to not just focus on what they're making necessarily, what their product is, but just to focus on the processes.
Great. Any other questions from the audience? Any other hands? Here in the front, there's one right there.
You're so comfortable when you're doing the high class show. Does this come from the 15 years, or is that just a comfort? I'm not sure. Were you out on the cruise ships also?
Yeah, I've done the ships as well. It's a comfort in doing something every day for 15 years. There's one thing I'm comfortable doing. It's probably blowing glass and.
You're so comfortable when you watch you. It's just wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Catherine's really talented. She's very good. Humble also.
Have you ever made something that you absolutely adored, you enjoyed the process, and you found a market for it?
No market?
Good question.
Sure.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
definitely.
Your best failure. Tell us about your greatest failure. Anything come to mind?
I designed some candlesticks that are our most complicated piece to make. And they're pretty cool, but they don't really sell.
You know the kiss of death for any glass that you make. It's if all the other glass makers love it.
Love it, yeah. And this piece, yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's a good one.
You know it'll never sell. Any other question? Yeah, of course, please.
How do you find your wholesale accounts? Personal contact, you do trade shows, other kinds?
Used to be trade shows.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
There used to be trade shows. Well, I still do trade shows. I'm down to one trade show, the New York Gift Show. But wholesale accounts, yeah, we did, for a long time we did 3, 6, 5, 7, I don't know, five trade shows a year. And 3 of them were almost simultaneous. So we had to have 2 crews of people on the road at the same time. And we actually had colored pencils to tell where certain people were during that period so that we would know how things were moving.
This was another common discussion that we've had, is how that market has changed. So I got into this in the early 90s, and everyone I knew who were big-time glassmakers, they would go to 2 shows. They'd go to Philly and Baltimore, and they'd make $75,000 at each show, and they'd go back to their studio and work for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But it's not the
Those
same.
days are over.
Yeah.
I in the early 80s, in 1980, I was just starting. I started my business in '77. I started blowing glass in '75, but in 1980, I didn't get into a trade show in Rhinebeck, New York, which was that was the pivotal thing, and the same organization was doing a trade show in Texas, and I went to Texas to do a trade show. And I took a guy with me who was an out-of-work songwriter, which is sort of an oxymoron because all songwriters are out of work. But when we were traveling, he said he was going to take my work to some of the corporations down there and try to sell it. And anyways, I made $800 at the show in Texas. That was right after my second child was born, so it was sort of important that I made money. And he went to Zales Corporation, and in a half hour walked out with a $100,000 order. And so that for 4 years I didn't do trade shows. I just worked for Zales and other department stores.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any other questions
So you find
out
them
there?
in the weirdest places.
Thankfully, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully. We've got one coming back here.
I believe probably most of you are members of the Glass Art Society, and their magazine almost every month has a marketing article. Do you guys follow that and use that advice, or do you sort of slough it off? Thank you.
Cass has a marketing article?
I'm going to start reading that.
Yeah.
But no, no.
I think these guys could write the articles.
Yeah.
It's pretty personal, depending on
where you are in your career. It might have some relevance.
and
but
geographics too.
What?
Yeah.
Well, we choose our shows geographically sometimes.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
is something that it's hard to do a blanket marketing advice, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, specific things anyway.
And for the size of your studio and what you're doing.
We have a question up here too in the front.
For those of you that ship your product, and I imagine most of you do, and glass being what it is, how do you deal with or perceive the actual shipping process, considering the breakage, the insurance, the packing of materials, and the headaches of customers complaining about broken receipts?
You learn to pack it so it doesn't break.
Yeah.
If it breaks,
You really
if it
do.
breaks, you didn't pack it well enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
What about the time-consuming part of that?
Let me share a story about that that's happening to me right now. I got an email 2 days ago about a gallery I sell to in Florida who had a big dragon I made. They sold it. Then they had a customer come in who saw it, who wanted one too. He was celebrating that he was cancer-free. He really wanted it, and it was gone. I happen to have one in Rochester, but that's closed down. So I went up there last night with my son to take pictures of it to send to them for the client. The client likes it. Now I have to go up to Rochester again on Saturday and pack it and then come back down here Saturday night so that I can leave Sunday morning. And, I have to have a box this big. I had to rent the car a couple days extra. It'll cost a couple $100 to ship it. Sometimes we palletize things because it's hard to turn a pallet upside down or on its side. It's just a little trick we use. But it's just a part of the game. I think your guys' stuff doesn't break quite as much. Is that right?
One of my teachers back as a teenager started a ceramics factory, and he uses an industrial process called skin pack. And it enables you to vacuum form a sheet of plastic down to a pad of cardboard and isolate the piece. So for our dinnerware, our bowls, our platters, it's a great way of shipping. So our process is a no-brainer. It takes up a lot of space. We have a big shipping department, sometimes as big as some people's hot shops.
Yeah.
So there's zero breakage on our glass.
Yeah, we
Shipping
rarely lose anything.
Another artist, like maybe a dragon,
That
is
would be a tough one.
It's very stressful for us. But we have the facilities. The boxes are stacked to the ceiling in all different sizes. And we build it into the price. We don't like to add a packing charge. We find that offensive when we buy other people's work. Build it into your cost. It's no different than the fuel or the kugler. It's part of it. An extra percentage for packing.
It's glass.
Yeah.
We had Raven Skyriver here for the Glass Art Society conference, and he made a huge sea turtle. He sent out, like you said, a pallet, and it had pre-cut foam in it, so we just dropped it right in there, all snug, packed it up. I mean, it's a necessary and completely invisible part of the game, I think, for a lot of people. Any other questions out there?
Just a comment on that. I'm Stephen Krug. I'm the chief conservator here for the Museum of Glass, and thank you so much. I cannot hack glass any better than what you're saying. Is I've seen so many pieces damaged, and I don't want to fix them.
Here's to the good packers.
Pack them well, ship them well, and I never want to see them back here.
All right, a couple more questions here. We have one here, the gentleman in the green shirt, and one in the back.
I had a quick question. The internet is really taking over everything. And you guys have been in business for a long time. Do you think the internet is taking away from your business or is helping your business? Because let's say one piece can be made by you and it can be copied with, let's say, Chinese, exact same one for 1/3 the price. So is this helping you or is reducing your business or what?
I think that whenever you're making something that can be perceived as a commodity, in which the chief element of it is the concept and is not technically difficult to make, that may very well happen. The direction that I've followed is just to make things, I don't do this on purpose, but they're very hard to make. It's never been a problem for me. People who copy I call them copyists. They're inherently lazy because they're copying somebody else's idea. A lazy person is not going to put the effort into it to make it excellently. It will always lack quality. So the true artists are not going to copy you because they're interested in doing something new that they've thought up themselves. The people who I used to be copied by China back in the day, and I'd go around to the New York Gift Show and I'd look at the new thing they made that they copied. They never do as good a job as the person who originated the idea. So if you can maintain the concept of quality, I think the copyist will never attain the same quality level as the original.
Yeah, that's true. We've been knocked off by China to the point where they actually pull molds off of our work.
Wow.
And sold it in various department stores and stuff like that. And the quality is just not there. I mean, we had one company was spray painting. They were casting in clear glass and spray painting the back of it to make it look like it was colored glass and stuff. It was pretty crazy stuff. And we actually sued and won. William Sonoma knocked us off. We didn't sue them because their knockoff was so poor. But it was probably the same Chinese company that did it. But yeah, you risk, the internet is a risk, your work is out there. I mean, if you do trade shows, people come in and look at your work and they want to copy it and stuff like that. But it's rarely, as Milon said, it's rarely of the same quality.
I have another question in the back there.
I did a catalog at home called Artful Home. I don't know if any of you are because I've seen a lot of names of people that I've seen here in other places locally. And at Christmas time especially, they have a lot of ornaments. And what I like about it is that they include information about the artist, usually a picture and a little bit of a background. Are there any other catalogs that are that caliber that are available to you?
Any other, or online, anyone?
There's people trying to do it. Artful Home is the only one that really does it with any.
And Margaret, you sew through Artful Home.
I do. Artful Home is probably the major port of my income at this point. I love working with them, and I do the ornaments. They run a really well-organized operation.
We usually have one piece in every catalog.
And is it a big production run for you?
I find it somewhat annoying. I have to say, I find it somewhat annoying because basically I'm selling wholesale. I'm selling onesies wholesale.
Yeah.
You know, so that means we have to pack them, we have to ship them. I mean, they make the shipping pretty easy, but we're still selling wholesale onesies.
Piece by piece.
And it's not,
Well,
that's not whole.
That's why the ornament part is great, because it's not onesies.
Right. The
Yeah.
ornament part,
It's-
the ornament part is
We
different.
do better with that. Yeah.
Yeah, the ornament part is different. They bulk order
They bulk order.
for the ornaments.
Yeah.
That's
But
true.
it's great.
And I've done ornaments with them. And
It's good visibility.
Yeah.
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 The piece we have currently is actually one of our better selling pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Yeah, over here.
My experience with glass is involved with fiber optics and flat panel glass for laptops and displays. We surround everything with patents. And I hear you talking about copying. So my question is, do you take any steps to protect things with patents?
Does your team of corporate lawyers take care of that
Yeah,
for
my
you?
team of course. Actually, the story about that it was somebody saw the piece of work at a show in Atlanta that a rep group was selling, and they sent it to us and stuff, and we were listening to NPR, and there was a copyright lawyer, so we called him up, and we told him the story, and then we sent him the piece, and he wrote a letter to the company, and they sent him a check. And he was like, I don't know if I'm getting better at writing these letters or if we've run into just a really honest company. And I think what happened was they ran into an honest company. I think that this rep company went to China, and the product was already in the factory from Williams-Sonoma, and they bought it from them and started repping it. But yeah, it's a weird world out there.
I think to wrap things up just quickly, I'd like to go through and just in a few words, could you guys, do you think of anything that could make a change for the better for young artists, for local artists, anything that could happen here in Corning that would be a change for the better, greater opportunities, anything like that? Does anything come to mind to anyone?
Disable their cell phones.
Yeah, get to work.
Universal health care.
Universal health care, that's good.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think what you're doing right now is pretty helpful.
Yeah.
You know, I think that this kind of forum for local artists is and for New York State, I think you know we have a really vibrant glass community in New York State. I wanted to say, before when I first introduced myself, I came to Corning the first time in 1953. I was 5 years old. My father was working at Cornell and brought me down here to see the Steuben glass blowers. And so this place is pretty special to me.
It makes an
I just want to say
impression.
that.
We think so. Thank you. All right, let's give our panel a round of applause. I think we'll wrap things up. Do you guys have anything to add? I'd really like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to show your support for our local artists. I'm really happy we're able to get this exciting new program off the ground this year. This is something that we would love to see grow in the future, this Local Artists Week, and we have lots of great ideas on how to do that. The driving force behind this project has really been to create more opportunities for local artists and to bring awareness to the hard work and passion that they all put into their work. Still more to come. Tomorrow, Milon's going to be here making dragons and some other things maybe, and Vitrix from over on Market Street. They're coming here into the hot shop to make some stuff, so we're really excited to have Vitrix over here. Also, if you have time, please stop back on Saturday for the Makers Market. Everybody will be back representing their work, so if you have more questions, please come on up and you can talk to all of us. We'll be here working in the hot shop too throughout the day, so lots of exciting things. This coincides with Cabin Fever over on Market Street, so Friday night there's Cabin Fever over on Market Street, and hopefully we'll be back next year with more local artists showing off and sharing their fabulous work. So again, one more round of applause for our panel here. And thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It's great to see a good turnout tonight. Thank you all. We'll see you.